why is it that when Xi Jinping was imposing the clamping down on the zero COVID policy with an iron fist all the while, like places like Shanghai, I think, was shut down almost for 3 months, if I'm not wrong. And more than 80 cities were shut down with such ruthlessness. Is it that, I mean, he could have calibrated it slowly and he could have relaxed it, but then letting go everything at one time, was it again a political move by him, or was it that it was more of a miscalculation, or is it that he just succumbed to the pressure of the, agitating mobs around? I mean, what explains this sudden U-turn when even the 20th Congress also endorsed his zero COVID policy? Suddenly he goes completely 180 degrees opposite. Is it that he wanted to punish people, or is it that he miscalculated it, or how do you explain it, sir?
Very many factors are involved here. One is the internal political differences within China. Xi Jinping took nearly 4 months to reach Wuhan after the COVID erupted in Wuhan city. Much of the work was done by Sun Chunlan, the vice premier, and the premier Li Keqiang. Li Keqiang belonged to the Communist Youth League, which was wiped out from the standing committee members and also Politburo members. Viewers who have seen Hu Jintao being taken away at the 20th Party Congress, they would see that Hu Jintao belonged to the Communist Youth League and he was just removed from the Congress. The viewers may have recollected that the file which was being chased away by Hu Jintao and Li Chanshu and Wang Honing, the Politburo Standing Committee members, it contained 25 names, but the one name has been dropped, which included Hu Chunhua, who is a younger Communist Youth League leader who did not now has any place in the Politburo. Forget about the Politburo Standing Committee. So as a result of this, while much of the work is done by Li Keqiang, the premier, and also Hu Chunhua as vice premier before, and even now, this has resulted in huge internal differences, political differences. Number two, much of the local communities were organized by the Communist Youth League members or others. And local communities had a huge role to play in the lockdowns and others, or even protesters, mobilizing protesters. So there is an internal dimension to it, number one. Number two is that they initially thought that by locking down every other citizen, nearly 450 million people were in lockdown in as many places as you mentioned. However, one of the main concerns here is how to suppress dissent, political dissent, growing dissent because of the zero COVID policies and also because of the declining growth rates. It is said by a Hong Kong economist that 80 million people, that is 8 crore people, have become unemployed during the COVID-related pandemic period in China, as many people were asked to be inside without going to the factory or involving in economic activities. So 80 million unemployed is quite a huge number. Previously, the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences estimated that for every 1% decline in growth rate, there were 8 million unemployed. So the growth rates have also fallen periodically since 2010, but sharply from 2019 onwards. Last year, 2022, we were expecting some 2.4% growth rate for China. And this year, 2023, further down in the growth rates. So from 10% in 2010 to 2%, slightly above 2%, means 8% decline in growth rates. And consequently, those many millions unemployed in China. So dissent has increased substantially, and lockdowns helped to an extent Xi Jinping in suppressing this dissent. But finally, by November, the floodgates cannot be controlled, and so 17 cities saw protests after the Urumqi incident, where several people were burnt alive because they were closed. Their apartments were shut down as the COVID spread in that city in Xinjiang. So that resulted in sympathetic protests from all over China and questioning the zero COVID policies, because they were also watching the Qatar football event, and they found nobody is wearing any mask there, while China is controlling the crowd by these lockdowns, border controls, PCR tests, intrusive mechanisms for enforcing. There is a lot of police brutality as well in the last 2.5 years. In the name of COVID, anything can happen in China. The police and the local community heads had absolute control. And this is basically abuse of political power, police power. So that resulted in a lot of discontent among the people. So there is no other go other than to open up after this dissent resulted in what the Chinese traditionally, historically, since ancient times feared. That is the peasant uprisings, popular unrest, resulting in the regime changes, emperor being displaced. So this has resulted in a huge paranoid response from the government, and so they have no other choice but to open up. The third reason some mention is the possible loss of legitimacy. While many countries have tackled the COVID-19 despite many problems, they were able to, like India, for example, we now have full vaccination. While in the case of China, due to vaccine nationalism, they have blocked the science and technology professional inputs from abroad. As you mentioned, Giridhar Garu, there is the medicine problem in China, vaccine problem in China. They have restricted all the global firms entry into China, and with this vaccine nationalism, and they boasted that their vaccines were very effective. Their response has been very effective. However, what has happened was that there is actually the Chinese vaccines being ineffective. It had resulted in loss of face for many patients and others infected, and resulted in the people started questioning the government and the pharmaceutical industry in China. For example, they have no imports of AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, Sputnik, or other vaccines, which have relatively proven during the pandemic, while the Chinese vaccines became very ineffective. So as a result of this, the Chinese began smuggling in, as you mentioned, for example, the HIV/AIDS drugs, which are also basically to boost up the immunity of the infected persons. So these medicines, these drugs were frantically being imported through various means, mainly through smuggling. There is a Chinese movie some time ago, O Pushu Yaoshen, meaning I'm not a kind of goddess of medicine. I'm not a god of medicine, which basically this movie suggests that there are 180 million liver patients in China. They import a lot of drugs from India because these are cheaper. But since the Communist Party had a lot of linkages with the European pharmaceutical lobby, they denied Indian pharmaceutical products entry into China by various pretexts, various restrictions on these. And while many Chinese would take suitcase loads of these medicines whenever they come to India, because of the generic nature of these drugs and relatively cheaper compared to the European drug mafia and the Communist Party mafia, which were hand in gloves with this at the cost of these hundreds of millions of Chinese patients. So smuggling is quite rampant from India, from other places where these generic drugs are available. Ramsavir is one drug that is also selling a lot in the China market. So the medicines are in shortage, the vaccines are ineffective, while the government brutality, police brutality resulted in a lot of discontent. For how long can you sustain? That was the main problem that the Chinese people faced. While the leaders and party cadres were having the best of the facilities, ICUs and others, the common folks really suffered in China.
Share this video, like, subscribe, and comment, and then encourage a nationalistic channel like Nationalist Hub.